I have had the same man cutting my hair since the late 90s. So it's been 20 years. And we've developed a bond. We've developed a relationship. There's something very intimate about someone cutting your hair, especially over and over and over again. And when I first met him, I was just becoming a therapist. Well, what would happen as I would come in is he would talk to the other people who worked in the haircutting salon, and they would always call me the psychiatrist. Oh, here comes the psychiatrist. And I'd always say, no, 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 I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm a therapist, or I'm becoming a therapist, or I'm a social worker. Well, that didn't really go in exactly. What they would say is, oh, he's a psychiatrist. They still say it, actually, when I go. So often, oh, he's the psychiatrist. Sometimes they would ask me questions about certain things, certain sort of psychological questions, certain scenarios, things that were going on, questions about personalities and things like that. Well, what happened that brings up this subject of vanity for me is I came in one time, and at the end of a haircut, he was putting the mirror around, and I looked and I noticed on the top of my head, this was for me age right around, I think it was around age 32. So I'd been seeing him already for a good 5 years. Well, he put the mirror on after he'd finished the haircut, and I noticed my hair looked like it was kind of thinning at the top of my head a little bit. I'd never noticed it before. And I said, huh, am I starting to go bald? And my haircutter, my barber, said, oh, no, 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 no. I never talk about that with clients. I never, ever talk about it with my customers. I said, what, about balding? He says, no, I never say it. I said, so am I going bald? Am I going to go bald? He goes, no, no, no. Like I said, I don't talk about it with people. That's something between them and themselves and their own mirror. And I said, so you won't tell me something that you probably know a lot more about than I do, because you know about hair patterns and all this. He says, listen, I don't tell it. I said, why not? I said, I was just curious from a psychological perspective. And I told him, I said, psychologically, I'm curious. You never tell people. He goes, I'll tell you why. He goes, when people ask if they're going bald, let's just say they are, hypothetically. He said, and I tell them that they're going bald, and I tell them how it's going to progress. Well, what happens is they never come back after I tell them, even long-time clients. They always get all weird about it, and they don't want to know. Those people really don't want to know if they're going bald. He goes, let them figure it out for themselves. I'm not going to be the one to tell them. I said, oh, I get it. It's the concept of kill the messenger. You're the messenger, and they want to kill you off. He goes, exactly. It's called kill the messenger. So I said, oh, okay. I said, but listen, I said, you've known me for 5 years. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm someone who has a lot of connection with myself. I know myself very well. I've learned to love my body. I respect myself. I don't have insecurities about that. For me, it's just a strictly objective question. He goes, no, I ain't going to tell you. I said, come on. I said, listen. I said, it's not going to threaten me. I just want to know it objectively, what's going to happen, and you're going to know better than I am. I said, listen, I know myself well. I've dealt with myself and my body for a long time. I've really overcome a lot of humps. I know I don't have insecurities around this. I used to have insecurities around my hair. I no longer have insecurities around my hair. I was like, trust me on this one. He looks at me and his face dropped a little. And he goes, you know, okay, I'm going to trust you. He goes, I'll tell you the truth. He says, your hair is starting to thin. And what's going to happen is you're not going to notice it so much over the next few years, but in 5 years and 10 years, there's going to be a bald spot. And it's going to start spreading, and it's going to spread, and about 15 years, it's going to be about like this. He said, and then eventually what's going to happen is it's going to spread all the way down, and you're probably not going to lose it in the front because you're not having a receding hairline, but you have the kind of baldness pattern. And I've been watching it for a few years. And I said, you've been watching it for a few years? He goes, yeah. And I said, and I'm going to start getting a big bald spot? He goes, yeah, that's what's going to happen, and it's going to spread, and it's going to go down the back, and eventually it's going to, when you get older, it's going to get, I said, I'm going to go bald? He goes, yeah, you're going to lose your hair, and it's going to start in the back. I said, I don't want to go bald. And he goes, wait a second, you're just telling me you don't care if I told you. It makes no difference. It's objective stuff and being a psychiatrist. I said, I'm a therapist, and he says, what? And I said, no, but I'm going to be okay. Don't worry. He goes, well, that's what's going to happen. You're going to lose your hair. And in 5, I said, okay, I got it. I understand. And I went out, And I thought about it, and I went home, and I got an extra mirror, so a second mirror, and I looked at my hair, and I saw what was going to happen. And I felt horrible. Not horrible, but I just felt insecure, and my vanity was affected. Well, fast forward a month after that. My hair was growing out, I was working as a therapist, I look in the mirror, I see my hair going, I'd still keep looking at that little bald spot and thinking, oh, is that really true? And it got longer, 2 months passed, and it's like, okay, it's time for me to go for my haircut. And I thought, you know, I think I can cut my own hair. And I said, I don't know, I can save the money. And I think I rationalized it that way. And I started trying, well, maybe I can do it. And I would clip my own hair. And I did it even without a mirror in the back. I could just do it with a mirror in the front. And I didn't look at the top of my head. I don't want to look at the top of my head. It makes me kind of uncomfortable. I don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about getting older. I still feel like I'm barely a kid. I still feel like I'm getting over all the horrible stuff that happened in my childhood. And now I'm suddenly becoming an old man. I wasn't quite ready for that. So I skipped a haircut for 1 month, and I did the clippers, you know, on my own head, and I found I could do it pretty well. And the back was a little tough, but I was able to do it. And I cut it kind of short, and everybody noticed, oh, you got a different haircut. You got a brush cut now. And I was like, yeah, well, I'm trying something new. I'm a minimalist, I said. I'm doing it myself. So went on. A couple months later, my hair's growing out a little bit and getting curly and wild. And I thought, well, I have this clipper. I'll try it again. So I did it again. And cut my hair and went on a few more times, missed a few more haircuts, and then fast forward about 1.5 years, almost 2 years later, and I was feeling guilty because I thought, you know, he was right. He knew me better than I knew myself. I was kind of embarrassed, and then I kind of felt like, I didn't want to go back, didn't want to have to face him. Well, one day when my hair was getting long, I thought, you know, I'm going to go back. And took a deep breath and went over to his haircutting salon, his barber shop, and walked in, and he saw me, and he looks at me like this. I hadn't seen him in 2 years. He looks at me and goes, how's the psychiatrist doing? And I'm like, okay. He goes, come on, let me see the top of your head now. And I bent down a little bit for him. He goes, so you're going bald, I see. And I said, he goes, so you're so mature and you can take it. You can hear you have objectivity. He'd been waiting for me. He knew I was going to come back because we actually really did have a really nice bond. He goes, come on, sit down, sit down. And so it was time for my haircut. I sat down and he cut my hair and he goes, oh, I see your baldness is spreading. The little bald spot's getting bigger there. Your hair's thinning out. And I was like, it's true. And you know, I felt it was fine. Let him tease me a little, because I deserved it, because he was right. And it was very interesting for our relationship. I remember that. And oh, by the way, I've still been going back to see him now. It's been 13 more or so years since I've been going back. And I did acknowledge to him. I was like, you know, in all fairness, you really did know me better. He goes, listen, I've been cutting hair for 35 years. He goes, I know all about cutting hair, and I know how guys are. You're all the same. Everybody's the same. And by the way, my hair cutter, he's losing his hair. He goes, I went through it too. He goes, you just got to accept it. Don't fight it. Don't do any of this comb over stuff. That's ridiculous. Just grow older. Let yourself be natural. Don't dye your hair. Don't hide it. None of this plugs and all this. He goes, I'm not going to do any of that. I refuse to cut your hair if you want to do any of that comb over stuff. And so I learned a lot from him. I learned, you know, also about myself, that sometimes I think I can know myself so well, only to discover that I have areas that I don't know myself so well. Blind spots, literally. Areas in which, no pun intended, I can't see myself in the mirror. And also, it's nice to have people who can be honest with me, and people who I have a real bond with. And in a funny way, this whole idea of being a therapist at all, in a strange way, in certain parts of my life, this guy is like a therapist to me. My barber, he is like a therapist to me, and I've told it to him. And he goes, yeah, you know why I'm like a therapist, unlike you guys? He goes, I tell it straight. I tell people how it really is. I said, well, you don't tell people about going bald, though. He goes, that's an exception, but for you, I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to tell you forever. And it's true. Every time I come in, he goes, hey, let me see how it's doing. Ooh, I can see more of the top of your head. And I say, you know, that's the part of me that needs to be humble. I'm going to take it. I'm going to listen. And the funny thing is, with him teasing me, in a loving way, because I was teased when I was a kid and it was not in a loving way. And I know he loves me. And actually I love him too, and we have a great bond. And in that way it's like, yeah, he's helped me. He's helped me come to terms more and more with my baldness, or my increasing baldness, my bald spot, as they call it. Some people call it helicopter launching pad, or when I was just in Africa, they call it a lollipop, because it's like someone licked the hair right off the top of my head. I liked that one. Well, it's been an interesting relationship also with me and YouTube and my bald spot, because for the first however many years, I didn't want people to see it. I wanted to edit it out. Sometimes I would be in thinking, leaning forward when I'd be talking and thinking, and I was like, oh my God. I'd notice it afterwards when I'd look at the video when I was editing, and I could see it, and I was like, I don't want that. Or when I was sitting, I'd say to myself in the back of my head somewhere, don't lean forward, because they're going to see it. So that's part of why I talk about it, because it's just part of life, and it's part of being a humble person, to just accept who I am. Not easy, it's a growth process for me. But it also feels better to be humble, not to have anything to hide, and to find my blind spots, and to root them out, and to work to love myself anyways. And I am grateful to my barber because he's helped me.